Hi, and welcome to this episode titled Buying a Car in France, subtitled Liberated by a Shit Car. I'll come on to that. In France, I have a second home. I refer to it as a second home as opposed to a holiday home because I'll often spend a month or two there. Typically, a holiday home you'd spend a week or two. And that presents a new problem. If I hire a car, it's expensive for that amount of time. Also, hiring a car's got more and more complicated. There's so many different insurances, all of which seem to fleece you. There's huge price problems. There's picking it up. You've got to go around the whole car for dents, none of which have they marked on the paperwork. Honestly, hiring a car's become a nightmare. So I was trying to avoid hiring a car at the airport. Also, if I drive down, of course I've got my English car while I'm down there, and obviously I can get insured to drive it in France. But there's a problem, and that is that the French treat their cars very differently to the English. We'll come on to it in a minute. In the UK, I have a beautiful BMW. I love it to bits. It's not particularly flash or valuable. What it has is a sodding great engine. It's what the police use as their unmarked pursuit cars. Very few things can get away from this car. It's 300 and something brake horsepower or PS. It's got an 8-speed gearbox. It goes like nothing on earth, and it doesn't look like it's going to go. Problem is, if I take it to France, it picks up injuries every single time I go. And that's because of the way the French look after their cars, or rather don't look after them. So in the UK, and I'm sure it's available worldwide, we have a series called the Grand Tour. It used to be the Top Gear crowd, and they did an episode called Carnage à Trois, which started What's Wrong with the French, where they look at French and their car care or lack of. And it turns out the French actually don't give a damn about a car. In fact, if you drive a really nice car in France, they treat you with huge suspicion. They buy a car, they run it till it dies, they dump it at the back of the garden till it rusts away and buy another one and run it till it dies. We'll come on to that because they may have it right. Let's have a quick look at the process of buying a car in France. I went onto the Facebook groups, second home in France, etc, etc, etc. There's a Facebook group for everything now, probably including buying cars in France. If you go through that group, there's a load of self-appointed specialists who are just looking for any problem they can cause in buying a car, put you off straight away. My experience, dead simple. Absolutely dead simple. Far simpler than the UK or anywhere else. It worked a treat. And I'll go through that process quickly now. Like the UK and probably any other country, your vehicle comes with a registration document or a grey card. The registration document, again, I suspect like any other country, has the age of the car, the power, the pollution rating, the blah blah blah, weight, maximum weight carried, maximum number of people. God only knows how they find all these things to put on a grey card. But anyway, it's a fairly standard document. And you have the document, and when you get that document, they also send you a PIN, which is a number that allows you to actually update and make changes on that document. So when you buy a car, you get given the green card, and either they go in with the PIN and change it over to you, or they give you the PIN and you go in and change it. I went through a dealer. Because I looked at a few cars and I got very suspicious about meeting people in supermarket car parks who didn't want to give me their ID or no photos, that type of thing. I got very suspicious and I actually went through a dealer. Dealer did much the same thing, gave me the card and the car, and off you go. It was really very simple. Once you've got that grey card and the car, you then take it to a registration centre. There was one in the village next door to my village. In fact, there was one in each village either side. I mean, they're everywhere, these things. You walk in and they re-register it. So they take your details and they re-register it into your name. I mean, it really is that simple. And I think a week or two, it's nothing like the DVLA in the UK where you can wait months, a week or two later, my new grey card comes through to my address, along with a separate letter with the PIN number that allows me to actually make changes to that grey card. Obviously, if you're buying an older car, you've got to think about its roadworthiness. Obviously, if you bought from a dealer, it should be roadworthy when you buy it. Mine came with its CT, its control technique, which is in the UK MOT, but basically the roadworthiness checks. It had 2 years on it because it had just been done, and it comes with a little card that slips into the window that shows when it's due, and I guess a registration number, so that an ID number, so the police can check it if they stop you. So you have to do that every 2 years, and you also then have to insure it as well. And with the insurance comes a little green card, almost identical. You slip in the window so that if you get stopped, the police can see that the vehicle's insured. I was absolutely terrified about insuring it. I thought this is going to be a nightmare. In the UK, you ring up your insurance company, they want to know your shoe size. Did your mum have a maths GCSE? Have you ever done this? And, a list of questions that goes on for 20 minutes while they work out, why they can put the price up. In France, it was dead simple. Where are you going to keep it? What make of car is it? Registration. Who's going to be driving it? Because actually it's insured for any driver, which is quite normal in France. In the UK, certainly my BMW, I have to name anyone who's going to go near a bloody thing for the insurance. In France, for my car, it was dead simple. It's insured for anyone. You can just give somebody the keys, they can drive it. Anyone who's got a driving licence, basically. There was no restrictions on its use. Am I going to use it to go to work? Or am I going to go to shopping in it? Am I going to do this in it? Like the UK. The UK's insurance just got ridiculous and consequently extremely expensive. So in France, dead simple, a couple of questions. My insurance was, off the top of my head, €18 a month for a shit car, albeit. But in the UK, you don't get anything for less than a few thousand. I mean, it's getting ridiculous in the UK. So insurance was a dead simple job as well. And while I was there, they printed out the insurance details with that little green, I think it's called a papillon or butterfly, that you drop into the windscreen to show that it's insured. And that was it. I now have a legal French car. I mean, it was really simple. And as I say, compared to the UK, simple, cheap, straightforward, and compared to what you get on the Facebook groups, God, don't go on there. It's just people looking to cause you nothing but aggro and make themselves look like they know a lot. It was a doddle, honestly. If you're thinking about buying a car in France, a doddle. So what was I looking for? I was looking for a very specific list of requirements from my car. I've got some English friends out there, they've gone and bought themselves a shiny new Fiat 500. That's not for me. And I don't think it's wise for the French because they don't look after their cars like we do. I can promise you that shiny Fiat 500 will pick up injuries quite quickly. So what was I looking for? What I really wanted, I wanted to fit in. I didn't want to look like that Brit who's bought a car in France. I just wanted to look like the locals. I wanted a camouflaged car. And I decided that had to be something that wasn't too shiny. And in France, there's this strange obsession, certainly where I am. I think Paris and some of the big cities may be different, but out in the wilds, there's an obsession with these small utility vehicles. I'm thinking the Renault Kangoo, small white vans. I mean, that's the anonymous vehicle there, a small white van, car van, nothing flash, an old Renault beat-up van. They all drive them. So I was looking for something like that. So a quick walk round the village car park. Kangoo, as it happens, that's my one. Kangoo variant. Blue one's an old Kangoo. Green one's a Berlingo, so similar to the Kangoo. Kangoo almost the same as mine. A new Kangoo, a very old Kangoo van. And that pretty much sums up the French's obsession with these Kangoo type cars. And in another part of the village, more Kangoo like vehicles. It's just so typically French. It had to have lots of space. I wanted to be able to put things in the back and take them to the dump, move things around. It had to be practical. The big thing I wanted, I didn't want an English number plate, I didn't want right-hand drive. I didn't want to be that Brit abroad, so I wanted a local French car. Now loads of people said, oh yeah, buy my such and such, and it was a right-hand drive English registered car. Now as soon as you've got an English registered car in France, you've got a number of big problems. One, you stand out like a sore thumb as being that Brit. Two, you have to take it back to the UK, in theory anyway, every 6 months. Three, you have to insure it in the UK, which generally means they won't insure it for more than 6 months. So you've got this constant boundaries of time and when you've got to go to the UK. In theory, you're meant to drive it back to the UK for an MOT. I have a friend who drives their car back to the UK every year for its MOT in the UK. I didn't want any of that. I wanted a French car. And finally, it had to be reliable. It didn't have to be flashy, didn't have to be fantastic. It had to be reliable. I didn't want it breaking down in the middle of nowhere at night. I don't normally have to worry about rust in the south of France. It's generally pretty dry. I mean, when you get scratches, nobody bothers painting them in. If I did that in the UK, my car would be gone in a few months. But generally there's no rust, so it had to be mechanically sound. And finally, I wanted something simple. I didn't want something that needed a main steeler who was going to charge me hundreds of euros just to look at it. I wanted something that I could take into pretty much any garage and have it fixed. To me, that meant a French car, French manufactured car. So going through that long list, what did I choose? I had plenty of choice actually. There's the Peugeot Partner. There's a friend's got one of those. I wasn't hugely impressed with that. The one that stood out was the Renault Kangoo. It's something I wouldn't even look at in the UK. Sounds snobby, I know, but it covered everything. It's practical. There's some people that have made them into mini campers. They've got that much room in the back. The seats go down. Mine had a tow bar on it, so if I want to get a trailer, which is a bit of an obsession in Europe, the Europeans like their trailers, especially the Dutch. Why do the Dutch love trailers? I don't know what it is about that. Anyway, I'm going off on a little trip down Tangent Boulevard. Kangoo. That really covered everything I needed. So, having run it for a little while, what do I like about it? Well, I joke about this, but it's probably its key feature. It's the ultimate camouflage. I drive past friends going the other way, don't even see me. It's just another silver Kangoo on a French road with a French number plate, left-hand drive. It doesn't stand out. It's the ultimate camouflage, and I like that. I like to just drop in and be part of the local motoring habits. Anyone can fix it. Dead simple. I can fix it myself actually. It's a diesel. It's very simple. It doesn't have complex control systems. It doesn't have any complexity to it. Pretty much anyone can fix it with a spanner. I mean, it's that simple. Actually, it's pretty good to drive in the sort of laid-back way that you drive in France. I mean, much more relaxed than the UK. I actually quite like driving it. I'm not sure I'd want to do a drive back to the UK in it. Probably a bit noisy and it's probably a bit underpowered. And yeah, I get back in my BMW when I get back to the UK and scare the living daylights out of myself. But actually, the Kangoo is a good drive. It drives along nicely and it's comfortable. I've done some quite long journeys in it and it's perfectly good. It has airco, big one for the south of France. Airco that had been recently serviced, regassed and was working a treat. Again, not as good as my BMW. You can freeze your nuts off in that thing, but it takes the temperature down in the car to acceptable temperatures in the south of France, so that's a big point. It has a tow bar, as I've said, always useful. It has a roof rack that can be easily added. It's got the points ready to just put a roof rack on, and it has reasonable fuel economy. Pretty good, really. A diesel, you know, underpowered diesel. It runs a pretty long way on a tank of diesel. And with all those benefits comes a couple of disadvantages. It's got a few. It's dirty. It's a dirty diesel. It's a bit sooty. Not bad, but it's, you know, any diesel, any old diesel is a little bit sooty. It drips a little bit of oil. It's dirty. There's another minor problem coming in France now. They have a thing called critère, and that defines your vehicle into a category 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5, 1 being the very best electric vehicles, hybrids, whatever, 5 being a tractor basically, and I think mine is a 4. Now the problem with that is that some cities that bring in restrictions in the city centre, I think it's common across the world now, restrictions in the city centre. You can only go in if you're critère 1, 2 or 3 or 1 or 2 or whatever. So there are cities now where I have to be careful about taking the Kangoo in. It's dirty, and that's one of its disadvantages. So why do I love this vehicle? And why have I subtitled this "Liberated by a Shit Car"? Let me go into this because this is big. The first one is I don't care about the bodywork. It's already covered in dents, scratches, and war wounds, shall we call them, from driving in France. If I pick up another one in the car park, I probably won't even notice it. I mean, it's got some pretty big dents and grinds in it, and so you don't actually care about it. And that's a really liberating thing, because when I'm in the UK, I go into the supermarket, I park my nice shiny BMW right out the way, and when I come back there's 5 cars parked around it. I call it the lemming syndrome, all of which have opened their doors onto my nice shiny car and given it a ding. And it's stressing when you've got a nice car, and suddenly you can forget about all that. I park my Kangoo. I don't even lock the doors regularly unless I've left my phone in it. I don't bother locking the doors. I kind of feel that one day I'll come back and somebody will have felt sorry for me and put some money on the seat. That's how bad it is. But it's liberating. It's also anonymous, as I've said before. Nobody notices you driving along the road because they're all driving the same bashed up, no, who gives a shit cars, I'll call them. It's cheap. And this is a big one as well. So I follow a channel on YouTube called According to Nicole. I've mentioned her before, and she covers things like where you're spending too much money for what you're getting. One of her key ones is cars. And I loved it because she said, I'm going to share a secret with you about cars, and that is they all do the same thing. They get you from A to B. Now, if you've gone and taken an expensive leased BMW or Range Rover or whatever it is, it still gets you from A to B. The way people look at you on the way and the comfort and, you know, some of the whizzy things are different, but the actual function of getting you from A to B is exactly the same. And I'll do exactly what According to Nicole did. That, exactly how it felt. So I'm driving my flashy BMW through a supermarket car park in the UK. I'm sure there's lots of people who look at that car and go, wow, what a car, you know. That's not why I buy it. And I spotted an old rusty Kangoo with a roof rack and a tow bar, and I'm going, oh, look at that Kangoo, oh, I miss my Kangoo. And then I look at my flashy BMW and I think, how mad is that? But actually it's right. That flashy BMW costs a lot of money, costs a fortune to insure. Yes, it gives me a lot of pleasure. Sometimes I drive home late at night on an empty road and I go Larry round the lanes and I get a bit of pleasure from that. But actually, value for money, Kangoo wins every single time. I love my Kangoo. When I arrive in France, first thing I do, reconnect the battery, start it up and get it out, and I just love it. And I think now, in future, now I won't buy another flashy car. I'm going to buy another shit car and not give a damn about it. And it's really, really liberating. Try it sometime. Just a very quick update. You may have noticed my office is notably bare. I've now exchanged on the the sale of my house and the purchase of my new house. I've been working like an Egypt for, well, many months now, clearing the house. I'm now packed up and ready to go. I'll be going in a few days' time, moving house. I'm going to take you with me. I've never said where I am or given much detail of where I am. I'm going to share that with you. So come along with my new house. We'll go through it. I'm going to do a lot of home automation in there, if that's your thing. Follow along. Quite a lot of decorating. I'm not a great decorator, but I've decided I'm going to do quite a bit of that myself. So come along with me. It's going to be exciting. I'm sorry that there might not be many videos, because I've tried to backlog up some videos because I am going to be working hard in the new house too. So it's going to be a year of quite big change and hard work. I did go kayaking with the lads last week in Cambridge. I've got some video footage of that. I'll try and put that together. As I say, I'm trying to back up some videos because I know that for the next few weeks it's going to be busy. But stick with us, and I'll see you on the next one.